Hi, Bookaholics. This is Deirdre Pippins. It's spooky season. Check out my pinned video on YouTube and TikTok of my interview with J.D. Barker. He has a really spooky story to tell you about. Now, if author interviews, book news, and book reviews resonate with you, please like my video and subscribe to my channels. I'm known across YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook as @TrueBookaholic. Thank you so much for your support. Now on with the show. Chris Kazularich, welcome to the Bookaholic podcast.
Hi, Deirdre.
Yes, I'm so glad you're here. We're going to introduce your segment into spooky season.
Perfect timing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, looking at the two books that you have published, it seems like you're on a particular genre. Let's start with Lazarus. I think that was your first, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Novella.
Yes, your novella, Lazarus. So it says here it's ingeniously unsettling. Lazarus provokes thought and dread in equal unflinching measure. Okay. So, okay.
That one I would call a supernatural thriller, but people definitely felt that there were parts of it where it was kind of gave you that unsettling horror vibe for sure.
Got you. So tell us a little bit about Lazarus. What is that?
So in a nutshell, say there's a serum in this story. There's a serum that's created, and say it's an elderly person with Alzheimer's. By going into, it's now sold at, you can go to your med spa and have this treatment done, specialty med spas, and they give this to you and you're young again. The Alzheimer's is gone. It cures you of these ailments. Have you ever seen the movie Death Becomes Her? With Meryl Streep? Yeah.
I have.
So kind of how they take it and they're like, oh, I'm young again. I'm a girl kind of thing. I love that movie. So that's my reference point. So imagine that, except it causes, not everything is as it seems. So supernatural things begin to happen to people, memory lapses. They start going into rages that they don't remember. And this is what's happening to people that are taking the serum. But the company who makes it stands by their product. No, there's nothing going on like that. And we do everything ethically.
Right.
But they're saying they make this, synthetically. The kicker is that, and you find this early on, so I'm not ruining anything, is they don't, they're actually abducting children and using their plasma. They're draining them of their plasma to make this product.
Oh my God.
So, dystopian horror, I guess, for sure.
Oh my gosh. Totally unethical. My goodness. Okay. Yes, I got it.
Yes.
Wow. That sounds really intriguing. I like that. You saw my mouth drop.
I did.
What?
And there was a look of what is wrong with you?
Like abducting little children. But it makes you want to read it. I will tell you.
Yeah, and my inspiration for it was right before the pandemic. I read an article that there was a real company in the US that was trying to get FDA approval. I don't remember the name of the company, but they were younger people, so probably their 20s, were giving blood transfusions, or they were taking their plasma, and then very rich older people were having these injections of this because they thought it would make them feel younger because, you get the young plasma. And then the FDA was like, nah, this isn't something we're going to do. But for me, I was like, interesting. That's what sparked the idea. And then for the children part, it was kind of like, there's all the QAnon abduction things. And it's like, I don't follow that line of conspiracy theory. However, it is something out there. What if, in this world, children were disappearing for something nefarious? So that's kind of how the two merged and became an idea.
Got you. Really understandable. I like the twist. I really do. Now let's talk about Menagerie in the Dark. These are the 14 stories that you were speaking. 14 stories that you were speaking about earlier. And it says, will stretch the limits of your emotions from heartbreak to horror, leaving you yearning for more. So, how would you describe the genre of these 14 stories?
So especially from feedback I'm getting from people, it is horror, but I almost blend it with speculative fiction. It can kind
Mhm.
of be categorized either way. And I would say that more so because there are stories in the book's second part, because this does follow a thematic arc. So it
Okay.
goes dusk, night, and then dawn. So it's kind of that whole idea that the stories
Oh,
get darker. And then at the end, they get brighter,
hope.
more hopeful, because it's no
Yeah.
matter how dark it gets, there's always a
Right.
brighter tomorrow, is the whole overall arching theme of the
Mhm.
collection. So in the middle, night, dark, those are probably straight horror stories. But toward the beginning, it is more what ifs, and you feel maybe a scared sense, but it's more of things that you're losing. Like a child has an incident happen and loses someone that's loved. There's another one where, which this one is actually based on, like, here we go with me writing something that I experienced. So there's one called Phantom in the Void toward the beginning. That would be in the first part of this book. And it's a
Mhm.
woman who's watching her husband pass away. And
Mhm.
then it kind of shifts and it's a memory. And that was her husband dying. And she has Alzheimer's and it's the love of her life. But because of the Alzheimer's, that memory slips away by the end of the story. And
Uh,
that the whole scene in the beginning, pretty much to the T, was all of us standing around my grandpa when he took his last breaths and my grandma's reaction to it. And she had Alzheimer's. So in the beginning, when it says the dedication to the book, where it says to Buck and Laverne, that was my grandpa's nickname was Buck and Laverne was my grandma. So this collection was really dedicated to them. And that story was for them. But it's kind of, that's where like some of these stories are very personal to me. But it is that kind of, that's scary, that idea of losing that person. So you could say it's horror, but more of like a scariness of loss toward the beginning. In the middle, you definitely have straight horror stories. I mean,
right.
they're for sure going to be like, okay, that's horror. And then toward
Right.
the end, you almost get a little comedy, a little satire. Things get more hopeful.
Right.
And then at the end, I have a nice palette, what I call my palette cleanser. It's just a nice piece of flash fiction that you're like, okay, I'm good after all that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I believe when people go to your website and if they
Mhm.
subscribe to your Substack, maybe they
Yes.
do get a copy of one of the stories called Totality.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So that would
Yeah.
be a great way to, if you want to check out Chris's writing, go ahead and subscribe to his Substack, and you'll get one of his stories out of Menagerie in the Dark called
Yep.
Totality. And is Totality a beginning, a dark horror, or a hopeful?
That one, I would say, I mean, it's in the third part. So it's getting more hopeful because nothing terrible happens to people at the end, but you still get
Okay.
that creepy eerie throughout the story because it's some weird happenings start occurring during the viewing of the Great American Eclipse in 2017. That's the setting.
Ah,
So when that moment of totality happens, you know how they say animals start to act strange and things like that happen because it's messing with their rhythm. Something
mhm.
eerie happens during that. But I would say everything turns out more okay, or does it? I don't know. Get to the end and I guess you'll see.
Got you. Got you. What inspired you to put down the written word?
Well, I don't want to sound cliche with everybody going, oh, I've written since I was a kid, but I did write
But
since I was a kid. But that wasn't what really led me into pursuing it further. So, of course, now reflecting on it, my mom, goes through all the stuff she saved as me as a kid from a kid. And she's like,
wow.
oh, look at these stories you wrote when you were 5. I always knew you do something with it. And it's like, did you? Because in college and stuff, I didn't do that. But then after college, I've always loved books. I
Yeah.
consume the written word. I'm an avid reader. But there was a long period of time where it wasn't necessarily something that I thought I wanted to do. But in times of stress or something, traumatic, or I just felt like I needed to work something out,
Mhm.
I always saw myself doing it, not in the form of journaling, which a lot of people do, but I would
Hmm.
start writing fiction stories. And it took me a while to realize, like very much probably into my 30s, to realize, oh, a lot of stories I'm writing, there's something in there that's a seed of something that bothered me. And then my imagination just went wild.
Oh,
And that's it. Yeah.
okay.
And so, and then as I kind of went through all of my things, that's where I was very much, it's like, I would love to pursue this as a career, because thinking as far back as I can remember, I've always loved books. I've
Hmm.
always have loved to write, but growing up, in the 90s, going through school, go to college, you could do whatever your dream is.
Right.
There was always the thing of arts have always been something that it wasn't, oh, you could just go to college and come out and you could just have a salary and, you've made it. It's
Right.
something that you have to really chase and have the passion for and pursue. And as I got older, I realized that that is for me. But, kind of growing up with the whole idea of do this, get a great job, do that, it
Right.
kind of got pushed to the wayside until I started living
Absolutely.
more and my life experience said, I want to be happy and feel fulfilled, and telling
Absolutely.
stories to people and allowing people to suspend disbelief and be able to go into these worlds like I do. That's what makes me feel complete and whole.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm a little older than you are, but I definitely understand about how during the 90s, it was like
Mm.
the corporate job,
Yep.
college, get a corporate job. And I'm just pleased to realize that now I think younger people are a little bit freer to
Hmm.
pursue things that make them happy as opposed to just simply a money-making job. And I
Yeah.
know you need a money-making job to pay your bills, but I
Yes.
think they are a little bit more freed up to express themselves than definitely than when I was, they had just got out of college, and it sounds like you as well in the 90s,
Yes. Yep.
definitely. So now you become a writer,
Hmm.
you are fulfilled, but what's your writing technique like? Because even though, you do have to have a systematic process in order to get a book done. So what's your writing process like?
Yeah. So it can be inconsistent, but
Mhm.
it's finding time with day job, family, and all of those commitments. Sometimes it's just easier to be procrastinate and go, I can't tonight. I don't want to do it. But for the most part, it's very much setting aside that guarded time, whether it's in the morning, which I do feel like I do best in the morning if I wake up before everybody else does, have a
Yeah.
coffee. I have one spot I like to sit in our front room, the
Yep.
window. I can see everything, and I just type. So like this morning, I had 45 minutes before I was like, okay, I got to get ready for work and everything.
Right.
And I 45 minutes, I wrote 450 words. I felt great. It was just like a quick, like banged it out. And then I'm like, okay, I felt
Mhm.
really good about that. So if
Mhm.
things get busy today and I can't get back to it, I can feel good that I sat down and showed up, because that's the most important thing, is consistency and showing up. Even if you are sitting in front of the computer for an hour and you write 2 words, the fact is that you overcame that resistance of distractions that want you to do everything else but write. So,
Yeah.
so that's my main thing, is consistency, is just guarding a time for myself to sit down and force myself to try. And usually
Mhm.
once I do, I write something, whether
Right.
it's a little bit or a lot. And that took me a long time to get that consistency for myself. There was a long period of time where it's like, oh, I'm going to do it. It felt very defeatist in my head, because you read, like other authors who are like, you have to write every day, write 1,000 words a day. And they set these
Right.
goals that are very big
Right.
and lofty. And for me, in my head, my mental trick for myself is I couldn't set that goal for myself, because I tried for a long time. And if I already knew that I didn't have the time to do 1,000 words, or I was just so like, after a long day's work, you're mentally fatigued. You're like, I just want to check out.
Oh, no.
If I already knew I felt that way and I couldn't get the 1,000 words, rather than face the failure of sitting in front of the computer and not writing that much, I just
Right.
wouldn't do it. And so
Right.
it's like, yeah, it's so like, why do that? So for
Right.
me, I'm just like, all right, I'll give myself a goal, because then it's something, but it's like 200 words a day. And I almost always do double that. But 200
Mhm.
words a day, that's like a couple paragraphs. And I'm like, all right, I mean, if I can't do that, like I could do that. I mean, even if
Right.
it's garbage, I
Right.
could do that. So
Right,
yeah,
exactly. Well,
yeah.
I mean, and like you said, that doesn't put too much pressure on you,
Hmm.
but that could actually mean you're structuring a character, maybe kind of like thinking out a
Exactly.
character and what their next move is, or just describing them or whatever. So yeah, that's a successful way of looking at things, I think.
Yeah.
Now, you do indie publishing, is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And so that can be a difficult journey to do all of this on your own. So tell us about that process. Why did you choose it? Or did you choose to go down the other road, publishing by a big publisher? Or what made you go down the indie road?
Yeah. So I ended up going down this road for now. I do think in the future I would like to do maybe something a bit more hybrid. So I of course want to, with my
Mhm.
next book that I'm writing is a full-length novel, and I very much would like to query agents and try to get an agent and go with the big publisher route. But
Right.
also see myself in the future, as a lot of authors do, then I'll also have my own stories where I just do on my own. And more of it had to do with me doing a lot of research on the industry and seeing what was marketable. Because when you're inspired to write something, write it. Like if there's the story that you feel, you know what, I want to get this down and I want to share it with people, chasing what is the popular fad, by the time you get your book published, the fad's over. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I feel like everybody did vampires, and then a bunch of vampire books came out and a lot of people tried, and then they were already moved on from vampires. So it's kind of, for me, and a lot of times maybe people try to write something that they aren't as interested in, but they want to make it. And I
Right.
don't blame them, because I certainly want to make it. I want to go into bookstores and see my book everywhere. But
Yes.
I also, want to stay true to what I'm writing, in the sense that if it's something that I really want to write, it'll be more authentic. I don't want to force it, because then I'll probably put out a bad book, and that doesn't help me for the future.
No.
So with a short story collection, you just, from what I've researched and found, it isn't something that sells really well unless you're a well-known author, or they're buying a full-length book and it's like a package deal where it's like, okay, we'll do this novel. Oh, and then you have this collection too, and we can put it out later. That's what I was kind of told from people that I was asking and looking up online and trying to like research. So with
Mhm.
me already knowing that, I'm like, my collection that I just released, this is my 14 favorite stories that I had written over the course of 12 years.
Oh,
So I just went through it, because I have lots of stories that I would just be like, oh, this little idea, write it. I have no
right.
idea if I can make it a full length like novel. So I'm like, oh, I'll just make this little scene, turn it into a story. I felt really satisfied when it was done. And I have
Mm.
lots of those. So I picked out my favorites and I made this collection. But I also knew, okay, I probably can't get an agent. And I did actually try. I queried agents with it to see if, like, okay, let's see if there is an appetite for it. And I
Mhm.
had several responses where it's, this is just not something that we think we could sell, but good luck to you,
Mhm.
kind of things. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's
Mhm.
kind of what I heard through the grapevine and through research.
Mhm.
So it's like, but that's okay. I mean, indie publishing
Right.
is difficult, because you're not just the writer, you're the project manager, the marketer, all these things that I had to learn how to do. And I'm
Absolutely.
like, whew, I don't know how to do that. Yeah. But it's been a rewarding experience, and it's really cool to control all the aspects
Yeah,
of designing the book. And if
true.
anything, if I do get an agent and get with a big publisher, I'll understand all the facets of the process, and
Mhm.
I know there's parts that you can't be involved in when you're dealing with a big company that's like, that's not your lane.
Right.
But I know I still have to market myself. So having
Absolutely.
to try to learn how to do that, it was important to force myself to learn.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what's next on your plate? You mentioned that you have a full novel that you're working on.
Yes. Yes. So I am writing a suspense. It's a thriller, and it is called, the working title right now is In This Town. Of course, I'm going to try to get an agent and, hopefully try to actually have this pitch to publishers, so I know titles can change. That's the working
Yeah.
title. My first draft is completely done. I've already worked with my editor on it, so I have I'm going through revisions and doing some structural changes to it now. So I hope in the next couple of months to have that next draft done so that I can send it back to my editor, maybe beta readers, get more feedback, and continue on. Normally, several drafts before it's done, but I have the bones of my story together. And with this one, there's this couple, after some incidences that they have in the city relationship wise, they almost split up, but instead we're going to give it another go. And they move to this very affluent town in the suburbs of Chicago. It is a fictional town that I made up, even though when people read it, they might be like, I kind of feel like I know where this is supposed to be. And they run into a person who is a neighbor, someone that lives in the town, and she's very peculiar and begins uncomfortable behavior, watching them, almost stalking like behavior. And a lot of people look at her as being that outcast in the town. And so, but this woman, she's saying she's very much, there's nothing wrong with me, it's the town. And as you go through the story, it's, what's the real threat here? Her, or is it the town?
Wow.
And so in this town. So that's going to be my next book. Right now we're at about 95,000 words. So it'll probably be about a 300 page at this point, but we'll see after some editing. And then for those who subscribe to my Substack, since you mentioned it, right now I'm doing a serialized novel on there where I'm just releasing a chapter at a time. So it's a new idea. I've never done that before. This one, I'm only a couple chapters in and the story's kind of developing as I go. So we'll see how it all turns out. But that's another thriller that's on there.
Again, I love it. I love it all. And I'm proclaiming you are one of our next big stars in writing, because all of your ideas sound so intriguing. So we'll put that out in the universe and hope it sticks.
Awesome. Thank you.
And so once again, you can subscribe to Chris's Substack, and we'll make sure we have his information in the podcast show notes and in the video description box below on YouTube. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Deirdre. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.